Hi, welcome to this part of my review featuring Fight to Survive. If you haven't seen the other parts of my review, featuring this tabletop role-playing game, where you use your martial arts to create a legacy and survive the mean streets of New Hope City, please check out the playlist in the description below. This time we are going to talk about the Successors. Combat is a lethal game. An individual fighter is not meant to last for long. If your character doesn't die in a fight, they will likely reach a point where they are too old, too physically injured, or have incurred too much hardship to continue in this lifestyle. Luckily, your character can continue on, in a way, by naming a successor to their martial lineage, to their martial heritage, their goals, their memory, and perhaps to continue in a quest for vengeance on their behalf. A successor has the potential to be stronger for their age than their master was. When it comes to no successor, if your fighter dies or retires without one, you create an entirely new player character, using the character creation process for a new fighter. But when it comes to finding a successor, you can find and appoint a successor in play, or develop them as a new character and give them to the game master to act as a non-player character, until it is time to transfer ownership of the new character into your hands, or create one at the moment your player character dies or is otherwise lost to you. There may be some overlap from when you develop your successor to when it is a good time to pass the baton, during which time the successor could even die. When it comes to candidates, prime candidates include most entries for a person listed under comforts: your daughter, student, adopted son, but potentially any other character you have met in the course of the game, or could work into the game. You could name that character your successor. The successor must be listed in your player character's comforts. However, a successor does not need to be a student of the fighter. Technically, they could never even have met. So you could continue the legacy of a character that you admire from afar, for example. When it comes to successor creation, there are important differences when compared to new fighters. When it comes to build, this can be any you like, even if there is already a player character with that build in the group. Choose a distinctive feature based on your build. Then also circle the distinctive feature of your predecessor, as you have adopted their eccentricities. Concerning age, this must be determined by the predecessor's records of how old the successor should be. Concerning district, where in New Hope City the successor comes from probably matches their familial lineage, where their parents are from, and does not need to have anything to do with who the previous fighter in their martial lineage was. When it comes to heritage, the successor should look again to their familiar lineage to determine this. Concerning moves, the points for techniques and comforts a successor gets are still equal to half their age, rounded up. Unlike for new fighters, a move's force can be trained up to the second checkbox for any move at the cost of 3 points. When it comes to comforts, this is where character creation differs quite a bit from that of new fighters. You inherit 3 comforts from your predecessor at a value of 0. You get to pick which ones. As a representation of the passing torch, pick one of those comforts and inherit half its value, rounded up. That's how much you care. Any comforts you inherit have a rift on them. Then choose 2 more comforts that are unique to your successor, just for you. There must be at least 1 comfort in each category. You will have a total of 5, and maybe more depending on inheritance. At least 1 comfort must be shared with another player character. When it comes to successor training regime, construct your training regime as you would for new fighters, with 2 key additions. Under the build column, the build move of one of the successor's familial lineages is added, as well as your own build. If you don't know your successor's parents' build move, just pick one now, but be consistent about it later. Under the martial art column, any of the predecessor's moves that had at least 8, a champion status in technique, gets added. There is one further step to creating a successor: sorting out your inheritance in the martial world. Depending how the successor becomes the player's player character determines a lot about them. There are 3 circumstances. The predecessor will be the successor's teacher. The predecessor died, violently or otherwise. or the predecessor quit, likely from excess hardship, or retired willingly. If the predecessor will be the successor's teacher, if your predecessor had a comfort for the successor specifically, then inherit that comfort at the same value, but rename it to represent your predecessor instead. You care about them as much as they cared about you. Remember to mark the comfort's relationship as teacher, in addition to whatever other label. If the predecessor had a comfort that more generically encompassed your successor, inherit that same comfort at half the value, rounded up. These are in addition to the comforts dealt within the previous section. The Game Master will need to construct a training curriculum for the predecessor as a teacher. Even though the predecessor will be a non-player character, the Game Master will use the player character to player character learning rules on page 212 to construct a curriculum. If your comfort for your predecessor hits the tiers of 3, 5, 8, and 12, then you may get to fill in more moves in your training regime, provided your predecessor was skilled enough. Starting hardship for the predecessor is equal to the former character's filled checkboxes in hardship at the time of the baton passed. If the predecessor died, you have a revenge pool. Add the sum of all filled checkboxes in the predecessor's character's health and hardship to the successor's revenge pool. When it comes to the revenge comfort, if the predecessor died fighting, then you may add the comfort of their killer with the relationship of revenge at the value of what the predecessor invested in you specifically as a comfort. Or if it's in a general sense, then it's at half the value, rounded up. If the predecessor quit or retired, the predecessor is still alive, but will not be the successor's teacher. They inherit one of their predecessor's special moves as their final lesson. When it comes to the new replacing the old, you should start generating your successor and telling your game master about who you would like it to be before your first player character meets some terrible end. Typically, players begin to plan this as soon as their player character gains a bit of reputation around town. Once you take over a successor as a character, they become your fighter, your only player character, and your old fighter regresses into the role of being a New Hope City non-player character and stops adventuring and advancing. You may only ever embody a single character at a time in Fight to Survive. And this concludes this part of the review. In the next part, we are going to talk about conflict resolution. As you can see, the legacy system is quite deep. There are many ways through which your successor connects to your previous character, the predecessor. All the old advantages, friendships, and perhaps even grudges will be passed down to the new successor. Thank you for watching this part of the review, and thank you for your likes and your comments. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. And remember, it is better to roleplay and to fail in character than not to roleplay and fail as a player. Once again, thank you, and see you later.